you probably had kale on your plate as a garnish, but kale is much more than a garnish. There's all kinds of varieties of kale. We have black kale right here. It's also called lacinato kale or dino kale because it kind of looks like dinosaur skin. Really good kale. Then we have this is green Siberian kale. This is one that's very typically used as a garnish. This is very delicious kale. It has a very thick stem, so it's very, very juicy. And then we have red boar kale, another delicious kind of kale. It's very frilly and has a nice thick stem. And we have some other varieties on there. We grow about 6 or 8 different varieties of kale on the farm. And kale is one of the best crops we can grow in Montana because and anywhere else that's a little chilly, because it does really well in cool weather, it does fine in hot weather, and it does great in fall weather. And so you can plant this kale was all seeded in the greenhouse at the end of February, and so by the beginning of April, when the seedlings were about 6 weeks old, I transplanted them into the ground and covered them with row cover, which is sometimes called Rime or Agribon. It's basically a giant dryer sheet that you lay out over the field, and it adds about 4 degrees of heat to the soil, and it keeps bugs out and it keeps things from freezing or getting too hot, so you're putting a blanket on your crops. So early April we transplanted this kale into the ground, and then we started eating kale by late April, and now it's just going gangbusters. And the other great thing about kale is every time you pick a leaf, another leaf grows. And so by the end of the season you end up with these kale plants that are about this tall that look like giant trees that you've picked all of the kale off of. And as long as it doesn't get below about 15 degrees, it'll keep growing. So in places like Portland or Seattle, places that have a little bit of a maritime climate, you can grow kale all year round. And it's a biennial, so the second year it'll make a seed. So the first whole year you'll continue to get leaves and continue to get leaves. And the second year you'll get a really strong flush of leaves, and then it'll make a seed. It's super high in iron when you cook it, and it's really high in calcium when you eat it raw. And so it's one of the wonder foods of North America that people just think it's a garnish, and actually it's one of the best things you can eat. And so I will show you a really fun way to eat it. Here's one thing you can do with kale that's tasty and delicious. It's called kale chips. And so we're picking off the kale off of the kale plant into bite-sized pieces, trying to avoid the fleshy stem. And any kind of kale will work, it just needs to be clean and dry. So we're gonna peel it off the stem and tear it up into bite-sized pieces. Very simple. I find that red kale works best for this kind of project, this one. It's also the prettiest. So pick it off, and then we're going to add the tiniest amount of olive oil, like much less than a capful, to the kale, and stir it around really well. And if you find that it looks really wet, that's too much. So it just wants to be just a little bit of olive oil, and it's really easy to get too much. So if you get too much, just add another piece of kale. No problem. Rip it up, stir it around, and then you can add some sea salt or any other spices that you like. Salt is important, good one. Stir it around, and then you want to put it on an ungreased cookie sheet and spread it out on your cookie sheet pretty well so that you have maximum exposure. And then you're going to put it in your oven that's set on broil. And let's see. And voila! It turns crispy and brown like this. Would you like to try it? Yes. Crispy kale chips. Mmm. Mmm. Delicious. 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 And they're kind of melt in your mouth. Delicious.